Good day and welcome to today's class. We are going to continue our studies on this topic of statistics, and this is the third portion of it. And in this class, we'll be considering how to determine mean deviation, variance, and standard deviation. Now we are going to go through these aspects with the use of an example, and I believe the example will be able to drive the points across. Now we are going to actually be determining the mean deviation, variance, and standard deviation of a grouped frequency distribution. And this example is what we are going to be considering. Now, in the question, we are asked to, according to the example now we have, they said the table below shows the distribution of marks scored by students in an examination, and we're asked to calculate correct to 2 decimal places the mean deviation, variance, and standard deviation. Now, the table is as shown on the screen that you can see. We have class interval, which shows that the frequency distribution we are given actually has to do with grouped frequency data. We have 60 to 64, 65 to 69, 70 to 74, 75 to 79, 80 to 84, 85 to 89, 90 to 94, 95 to 99. And the frequencies are also shown in the table: 2, 3, 6, 11, 8, 7, 2, and 1. Now let's quickly look at how we have to solve this particular question. Now, in the solution aspect, we will be asked to actually prepare a frequency table. Now, if you look at this example as it were, we were not asked in the first question to prepare a frequency distribution table. But in order to be able to perform this particular task in a very easy way, it is always good and advisable that you construct or prepare a frequency table for it. Now, in the preparation of the frequency table, you have your class interval occupying the first column here. And then after that, you have your class mark. Now, your class mark, if you followed our previous class, you will notice that we didn't call it class mark, but we called it mid-class. Now, your class mark or your mid-class is referring to the middle of that particular class. And it is gotten by adding the 2 class limits that we have. That is, by adding the lower class limit. In this case, in the first class here, we have 60 to 64. The lower class limit is 60. The upper class limit is 64. When added together, it will give us 124. Divided by 2, it will give us 62. Now, that is how we arrive at the class mark. So if you add 65 to 69, again, if you divide the value by 2, it will give you 67. The same thing with your 70 and 74. If you add 70 to 74, the value you will have, which is 144, divided by 2, will give you 72. Now, that is actually how we were able to determine all these sets of values. All the sets of values we have, that is how we're able to determine it. Now we have the frequency column, which was given to us in the question as it were. Now, in order for us to be able to determine mean deviation, variance, and standard deviation, automatically using this set of formulas we have, there is of necessity for us that we have to determine what the mean. So in order to determine the mean, it also means we have to look for our fx. Now, our fx is the product of our f and our x. So if you multiply your 62 by 2, it will give you 124. Your 67 by 3, it will give you 201. 72 by 6, you have 432. Your 74 times 11, you have 847. Now, with that being said, when we are done determining all the values for fx, we have to look for the total of fx. Now, adding all the values of fx together is what we mean by this sigma sign, which actually connotes what? Summation. Now, the summation of fx means the addition of all the values of what? It means the addition of all the values of fx that we have. And if all these values we have on this table like this are added together from 124 down to 97, we are going to end up having 3,150. Again, you do the same thing for your frequency. If you add everything along the frequency column, you are going to be having 40. Now, in order for us to complete this table, there's need for us first of all to find what? Our mean. So we need to look for the mean. Like you can see on the screen, your mean is equals to what? Summation f of x over summation f. Now, if we plug these values 3,150 and 40 into this formula, we are going to have something like this that is divided. Now, the final answer we are going to get there will be 78.75. Now, that 78.75, that is the value of the mean. Remember that we were not asked to determine the mean. The mean is just a means to an end. So we need to determine the mean to be able to determine the mean deviation, the variance, and the standard deviation if we are using this particular set of formulas that we have made up our mind to use. Mind you, this formula is not the only approach to determining the standard deviation of a group frequency distribution. We also have another type of formula, but this is actually the common one we use. But it can also be used for any question at all. You will still arrive at the same answer. Now, this is the value of the mean we have. So this value of the mean we have, we are going to bring it here. So we have x minus x bar. X bar here connote our mean. This x with a bar or a negative sign on top is what we call what? The mean. That is a symbol for a mean. So in order to determine x minus x bar, we'll say 62 minus 78.5. It will give us this value. 67 minus the mean will also give us this one. Now, after we have gotten the set of values we have here, then it will now be time for us to find the absolute value of what we have at this side. Now, these two lines that we have here actually connote what? Absolute. Their function is to remove the minus in anywhere we see any negative sign, but any value that does not have a negative sign will remain the same. Now, if you look at what we have, since the table is side by side, you'll notice that under this column, we have only repeated the same set of values we have when these absolute symbols are actually what? Not here. Now, without the absolute symbol, the negative sign was actually what? Included in the calculation. Now, with the absolute symbol or the negative sign, we have to what? To disappear, because that is the function of the absolute what? Sign. To remove negative sign or the minus anywhere they can be what? Found. Now that that has been done, you'll notice that nothing is supposed to or is expected to change just for us to remove the what? Negative sign. So this column remains the same except for the minus that we have. Now after that, we have our x minus x bar all in the bracket then with a square. Now what we are doing is either you square this set of values or you square this one, you arrive at the set of values that we have here. So your 16.75 squared gave us 280.5625. Your 11.75 squared gave us all the set of values we have. Your 6.75 squared will give you 45.56, 45.5 and 625. Then if you square this value that you have here, you also will end up with the set of values that you have as at that particular point. Now, those are the things that are expected of us to what? To do. And those are the set of values that you get. Now, once these values are determined, that it's now time for us to find out what? Our f times the absolute of x minus what? X bar. Remember we said this x bar connotes our what? Our mean. So your f times all these values is what gave us all this. Now, what we are doing is that we are multiplying these values of f along this column with all the set of values that we have here. So if you say your 2 times your 16.75, it will give us 33.50. Our 3 times 11.75, it will give us 35.25. Now our 6 times 6.75 will give us 40.5. If you keep doing what we have just done in the first three sets of values, you end up having all the sets of values that we have. Now when you are done, you are going to add everything. That is what we mean by this summation sign. Now everything added together here gave us what? 257. Now all these values will be needed, but let's just keep them at the back of our mind as we proceed to the last column of the what? Table. Now for the last column of the table, it is now time for us to multiply our frequency and the square of x minus what? X bar. Our frequency and the square of our x minus x bar. Remember, we already have a set of values under the column for our x minus x bar squared. And we also have a set of values for our frequency. So what we are supposed to do to get all these values we have If you multiply these two with the first value you have here, 280.5625, it will give us 561.1250. If you multiply the 3 with 138.0625, we end up having this set of values that we have here. If you say 8 times this set of values you have, this is what it will give us. Now, when you add all these values you have here, this is what we are going to arrive at: 2527.501. 2527.501. Now, remember, we were actually not asked to determine the mean, but we were asked to determine the what? The mean deviation, the variance, and the standard what? Deviation. Now, in the case of standard deviation, you should understand that your standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So in this example, we have tried to what? To mobile both of them together. But before that, let's check how we'll be able to determine the what? Our mean deviation. Now, our mean deviation is equals to what? Summation f into what? The absolute sign of what? X minus x bar all over summation what? F. Now, remember, on our table, we have the value for what? Summation f into the absolute of x minus x bar. And that gave us 257. Our summation f is 40. So if you plug this set of values into this formula, we end up having 257 divided by what? 40. So therefore, now our mean deviation will be equals to what? 6.425. Now, remember that in the question, they said we should correct all our solution to 2 decimal what? Places. But the answer we have here is not actually to 2 decimal places. So it is in your own place to do that adjustment. But if you want to do it, that would have just given us what? 6.413. So 2 decimal places, it will be 6.43. This 5 here will be rounded up to what? To 1, and added to this 2. That's how we arrive at the what? 3. So to 2 decimal place of this conversion, we'll have 6.413. Now that we have determined the mean deviation, let's quickly look at how we'll be able to determine the what? Standard deviation. Now, our standard deviation is the square root of the summation of f into the bracket of what? X minus x bar what squared all over summation what? F. What we need to understand is that this square root we have here covers everything in this formula. So everything you can see in this formula is inside the what? Square root. Now, without this square root, what we have is what is called the variance. So let's assume that you are asked to determine the variance. The formula for your variance is summation f into bracket of what? X minus x bar squared all over summation what? F. So without the square root, the formula is for variance. With the square root, the formula is for standard deviation. Please don't mix it up. Again, without the square root, it is for what? Variance. And with the square root, it is for what? Standard what? Deviation. I had to do it like this because of what? Space and time. Now, if we plug the set of values we have on the table into this formula, we are going to be having what? Square root of what? 2527.501 over 40. Now, if you divide this value by 40 and you find the square root, you will end up having what? You will end up having 7.9491. 7.9491. Again, in the question, we're asked to take this value that we have to 2 decimal places. So if this is approximated or taken or corrected to 2 decimal places, we are supposed to have 7.95. 7.95. Now, this is how we determine the mean deviation, the variance, and the standard what? Deviation of a group frequency distribution. Now, this is our 3rd class of our statistics what? Series. And I believe that it would have been helpful. And again, this video was actually created, or this class was created because somebody in the comment section asked that I do a class on a mean deviation, variance, and standard deviation. So if you have any question, please drop it in the comment section. Like the video. Also do try your best to subscribe if you have not done so. You can as well share with your friends so that they will also benefit from this class as you have always been doing since we started this class or this series on what? Statistics. So remain blessed and have a wonderful day till we meet again. Thank you.